Hey guys, I thought I'd put together some thoughts on healing Mythic Plus Ruby life pools as a non-fist-weaving Mistweaver monk. I normally describe myself as a ranged Mistweaver in raids, but in dungeons, even though I run the same exact talents, my playstyle's more mixed since I'm DPSing during downtime, I'm using interrupts and CC, and I'm occasionally making use of Rising Sun Kick to proc Rapid Diffusion. Regardless, if you play any of the variations on a ranged Mistweaver, I think my notes and observations are at least relevant, so here goes. On the trash before Meladrusa, most of the unavoidable damage is just tank damage, particularly on big pulls or on fortified weeks. That means there is a lot of opportunity to use our CC to prevent damage on this whole first stretch of trash. Most of the avoidable damage comes from standing in swirls. That's mostly the Terra Sentry's stone missiles and the Juggernaut's excavating blast, both of which can be hard to see if you're fighting in the water or if there's just a lot of visual clutter on screen. If people are standing in these and it's not enough to kill them outright, you might have your hands full healing. Earthshapers cast Tectonic Slam, which can be stunned or knocked, but not interrupted. This is significant because it does a ton of group damage if you let it go off, and if a Chillweaver puts a big enough ice shield on an Earthshaper, you can't do anything to stop it until someone's purged it or broken it with damage. So that leaves you with a couple good ways to help prevent damage. First, you can watch the Earthshapers and be ready to paralyze, leg sweep, or ring when they start casting Tectonic Slam. Second, you can watch the Chillweavers and use either your regular interrupt or any extra CC to stop them from channeling Ice Shield for too long, particularly if they're targeting an Earthshaper. I'm pretty sure the Ice Shield can be purged too, so if someone in your group can do that, that'll make it way easier to keep the slams from going off. When you get to the first mini-boss, you'll have to heal through a decent amount of tank damage whenever he casts Steel Barrage, but all other damage is avoidable. That's the fire swirls during each barrage, as well as the charge he does afterwards. The first boss got a few nerfs recently, so it's less of a healer check than it was before, but still worth talking about. Hail Bombs used to do a lot of damage every time she cast it, but now they're pretty trivial. Hopefully nobody's running into them, but if they are, you'll have to top them off before she gets to her next ability. All the time, I watch DPS use their mobility to get out when they're picked with Chillstorm, but then they have nothing left to get back out of the vortex, which ticks once or twice on them until they're finished off by the unavoidable burst at the end. Keeping everyone topped off during the storm so the end burst doesn't kill them gets a little challenging in higher keys, but really it's just the stress of trying not to lose the initial target of that storm. I usually cast Enveloping on them as soon as they run out, and use my next Vivify proc on them after the vortex appears. Just be ready to toss them an extra heal if they stand in the vortex for longer, but they shouldn't need any special attention beyond 1 or 2 heals if they're doing it even remotely right. The storm doesn't need to be brought out that far anyways. At 75 and 45%, she'll awaken some whelps, and that's when you should get your Renewing Mists rolling if they're not already. She'll start up her Frost Overload a few seconds later, and that's where I like to save Yu'lon to easily cover the group with Enveloping and some Vivifies. If the shield stays up for too long, you can usually power through with more of that, but it shouldn't be up much longer than your healing can cover. If it is, that might just be an issue of low DPS, or maybe they're just padding on the whelps instead of nuking the shield. After these 2 intermissions, she'll just be alternating Hail Bombs and Chillstorm, so it's just a matter of topping people off between abilities and paying special attention to the Chillstorm targets. The only other thing I can say about this boss is that if you're killing it so fast that you get back-to-back whelp phases, you might not have Yu'lon to cover both, so either have your revival ready or just power through it spamming your regular heals. Now the upper ring trash is some of the most punishing I've seen in dungeons in a long time, at least for a healer. But if your group is handling each of the different trash mobs the way they're supposed to, you can have a pretty good idea of just how much damage is coming and when. Thunderhead is a little rough, since the damage comes really fast when it does. His breath isn't really a healer issue since you either dodge or die, but the 2 magic debuffs he puts out are. You'll want to be quick to dispel the first in each set, and quicker to top off the second, and then the rest of your group, before you dispel the second one. I like to precast an Essence Fawn for 12 seconds of double mastery procs when I know there's about to be a debuff set, and I also try and set aside something unique for each set. The first one I usually go in dry, since everything's pretty stable to start with. I'll use Yu'lon and start spamming Enveloping on people when I know that next set is about to come, and on another set I'll Cocoon one and dispel the other. If I'm quick enough to notice, I can diffuse off one of the debuffs if I'm picked, but then I like to top off the second person before dispelling them, since the group damage from 2 dispels in rapid succession can easily get someone killed. The Blazebound Destroyer packs throw a lot at us. As far as what's unavoidable, there's the Living Bomb, which targets one person at a time, who you'll want to keep topped off before and after it goes off. He also casts Inferno every little while, which does a ton of group damage plus an 8-second dot. If you're steady going into each one, you can usually power through with just your regular heals and an Essence Font, maybe before or after, but it helps to cover one with Yu'lon, especially if things start to get ugly. Just remember to give special attention to the target of Living Bomb, since they're at special risk of being low health going into an Inferno. On the other hand, they might need to be topped off sooner than others if they get Living Bomb right after an Inferno. Now for the stuff that isn't necessarily your responsibility, but that you can help with, or at least be aware of. Flame Dancers occasionally cast Flame Dance, which you or someone else can stun, knock, or paralyze, since it does a huge amount of group damage if you let it finish. They also cast Blaze of Glory when they drop down to 1 health, which tears up anyone close to them until the channel ends or until they're purged, as well as spawning a bunch of fire swirls for you to dodge. This can be a bit disruptive if you don't have someone ready to purge as soon as they drop to 1, but the main takeaway for me has always been to just get out of melee range of them when they're about to die, and be ready to top off any melee who stay in for a tick or two. Though in my experience, anything beyond 1 tick is usually death. Cinderweavers throw fireballs at people that can potentially get them low before the Destroyer's next ability, but as long as they're being interrupted semi-regularly, the main danger they pose is Burning Ambition, a buff they give themselves which makes them cast faster and hit way harder. If you don't have someone who can purge this immediately, good luck, because a buffed Cinderweaver left to free cast for a few seconds can easily take out a few people, or at least get them low enough that something else will. The second dragon, Flame Gullet, isn't as bad as Thunderhead if you ask me, but depending on your group's DPS, he can start to hurt a lot. The only real damage he does comes at 50% when he casts Molten Blood on himself. He'll start pulsing for increasing damage until he dies, which can quickly overwhelm you if you're not ready for it. I like to hold on for a few ticks, spreading my Renewing Mists and casting Essence Font, then I pop Yu'lon and start enveloping on everyone before spamming Vivify. If it goes on much longer than that, I'll try and squeeze in a partial Essence Font and do it all over again without Yu'lon, but the hope is that between your group's DPS and their defensives, you'll kill it before it gets too out of control. The second boss is pretty simple for a healer, but on higher keys you'll be healing through some crazy burst damage, either on the tank or the group, or sometimes both at once. Whenever she spawns an ad, it'll cast Inferno just like the Destroyers did, and you'll want to get some healing rolling on everyone as soon as possible. The hope is that your group can manage interrupts on the ad to prevent any additional damage from Roaring Blaze, but if they don't, at least you'll know why everyone's dying. Casting Yu'lon right as the ad is spawning lets you blanket the group in Enveloping Breath going into the Inferno. That way your next Vivify proc can get them close to topped off, if not topped off. You can only do this for every other ad, but it's still pretty significant. Assuming your group can kill each ad before it casts Inferno a second time, you'll only need to get the group through the initial burst and the dot. You won't have to get them completely topped off until the next ad comes, which is a while later, assuming they don't take any avoidable damage along the way. The dangerous part, at least on high keys or tyrannical weeks, is that she likes to use Searing Blows just as you're starting to heal through the group damage from Inferno, which is why you want to try and do any necessary group healing in the first 2 or 3 seconds after Inferno is cast. Searing Blows is a rapid series of hits on the tank that can easily overwhelm them if they don't have some serious mitigation, so you might need to swap focus and give them some big heals as soon as that starts. If you can communicate with them and cover their weak spots with a Life Cocoon or more focused healing, that might help. Overall, just being ready for each Inferno or Searing Blows will get you through this fight. The trash before the last boss gives you plenty to do, but it's also got a lot of almost downtime. Storm Warriors are just moderate tank damage, while the little air elementals mark blue swirls on the ground and death bomb them, which does a ton of damage if anyone's still standing there. Ideally, this isn't a problem for healers to deal with, aside from dodging, but if anyone takes a sudden spike of damage or just flat out dies, that's probably why. Tempest Channelers cast Lightning Storm every little while, which does a decent amount of group damage over a few seconds. You can easily power through it without cooldowns if you react fast, but using Yu'lon on each storm if it's available can smooth things out and keep you from burning too much mana if you're chain pulling. Flame Channelers are super dangerous, since their Flash Fire cast can easily nuke down one player and then pulse its damage to everyone around them. If this happens when nothing's going on, it's startling, but it's healable. But if it happens during a storm or any other damage event, good luck healing through that. DPS should be able to keep it interrupted easily, and although you can help interrupt it yourself, I find that expectation a little unrealistic since you might not have a free GCD if you already have your hands full during a storm. So it depends on your group, as most things do. The last mini-boss casts Lightning Storm, just like the Tempest Channelers did, and it's more of the same. The only thing worth noting here is that you might want to hold your longer cooldowns for the real fight, which is right after. Even after the nerfs, I find the last boss to be pretty rough on healers, but considering the healing requirements for most of the trash and the earlier bosses, I gotta admit it's not that bad. I like to keep Urquhart on focus so I can see when he starts casting Interrupting Cloudburst, since getting spell locked by this at the wrong time is usually a death sentence for someone, if not yourself. Dispelling the tank whenever the boss casts Storm Slam is important, but as long as you don't let them take multiple applications, the priority is still topping off Flame Spit targets far more than the tanks. Reacting to Flame Spit is all that really matters if you're doing the rest of the fight right. On high keys or tyrannical weeks, you can easily lose yourself or other people just to the ticking damage from Flame Spit. In the first phase, before either boss hits 50%, it only picks one person at a time. Whenever I see the dragon casting Flame Spit, I'll try and have a Thunder Focus Tea ready with an Enveloping Mist to give them a big heal right away once I figure out who the target is. But if not, I can always cast Soothing Mist on them and then hit them with Enveloping and Vivify spam for 2 or 3 seconds. That usually gets them through. When one boss drops to half health, he mounts up, and Flame Spit starts targeting 3 people at once. This is where healing gets unmanageable really quick, especially if you have people spreading out of healing range with it, or if fire placement or wind direction get really bad. What I like to do is precast Essence Font, keep Renewing Mists active, and preemptively roll some Enveloping Mists on people so that when Flame Spit does come, I can hit one of them with Soothing Mist and spam Vivify until we're all through it. Odds are pretty good you'll be one of those targets most of the time, so it's not a bad idea to use one defensive for each set, even if you cast it just before it picks people. In most cases, you can trust that a Lead Cocoon or a powerful defensive plus a little trickle of healing will at least get someone through the dot, and making sure you're not losing people during the dot itself is really all that matters. You'll have plenty of time to top them off between Flame Spits, but that doesn't mean you should sit on your hands either. Revival after an Essence Font might be viable to cover one set of Flame Spits once they buff its small group healing on the 24th, but until then, don't count on it. Instead, preemptively casting Yu'lon and covering everyone with Enveloping Breath before using a Vivify proc is a safe bet for a smooth set of Flame Spits. As far as avoidable damage goes, anyone who stands in the breath, stands in the fire patches, or gets clipped by another player's Flame Spit radius will pick up an extra Flame Spit dot, and if this happens during an already active set of spits, it's not pretty and you're probably going to lose at least somewhat. By the time you're running keys this high, where Flame Spit can tick someone from full to dead, the hope is that everyone knows better than to get hit by any of these things. Even though this boss isn't nearly as much of a healer check as it used to be, there's a way to shorten the triple Flame Spit phase tremendously if you choose to. Triple Flame Spits only happen in phase 2 after one of the bosses hit 50% and Urquhart mounts up. Since the dragon lands, or at least hovers near an edge whenever it's casting its breath, you can get a lot of damage on it before phase 2, and if you make sure the dragon is the first one to hit 50%, and also that your DPS are saving their cooldowns for the final phase, you can shorten it so much that everyone's big defensives and your healer cooldowns can carry you through it. Depending on where the dragon stops to breathe, or how many ranged you have in your comp, this might lengthen the fight a bit, but especially on tyrannical weeks, this strategy can make the last boss the easiest. At least from a healer's perspective, since once the dragon's dead, there's no more Flame Spit, and it's practically a tank and spank. So those are my notes on healing Ruby life pools as a non-fist-wielding Mistweaver monk. This dungeon's pretty healing intensive, but I feel like Mistweaver's healing kit is well suited to its damage patterns. Let me know in the comments if you want more videos like this. I promised I'd make separate videos for each dungeon, more notes than a proper guide, and considering how different each group and each run can feel, I tried my best to cover the important stuff, from basic tips about the fights to more specific things that I do. Either way, I hope you guys find this useful, or at least interesting, and I hope to do more of these soon. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a good one!